What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be getting into my NFC and AFC North draft grades, the third edition of these drafts. We have done the South divisions and the West so far. So far at the top is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll see if anyone can dethrone Tampa Bay. But anyway, guys, let's get into this here. Starting out with the Green Bay Packers at the NFC North will be our first team that will grade. And as you can see on the right is my full individual grades, and you can see kind of the list of the teams. But yeah, Green Bay, interesting draft like they always have. Starting out with their first pick, Jordan Morgan. I think it's a decent, good pick. I give it a B. I had a top 50 grade on Jordan Morgan. I think he was a better prospect than a player like Tyler Guyton, who I think was very raw. Jordan Morgan, on the other hand, I think good prospect, good player. Has that positional flexibility that they like. No, I don't think he's going to be this elite guy, but at 25, that's not a bad pick. The ding here is that I think a Graham Barton, a Cooper DeJean would have been a better pick for Green Bay just from the value side of things. But I'm not going to argue too much. It's a good pick for the Green Bay Packers, in my opinion. I liked Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. And then Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He was my second linebacker. Really good pick. Had a second round grade for him. Not going to knock this one too much here. You know, they needed that second linebacker. He fits that scheme they're trying to run. Really solid pick there at 45. I really like it for Green Bay. Their best pick, I think, of the whole draft, besides maybe Michael Pratt, as we'll get to, Javon Bullard out of Georgia. Huge safety need down there in Green Bay. Javon Bullard. We all know Brian Gutekunst loves the Georgia defenders. He gets one here. Give me an A grade. That's almost an A plus just because of the scheme fit for Green Bay. My third safety. I believe he was the first safety off the board in this draft. And I can't argue too much with that. That's a good pick for Green Bay. Really good pick. Marshawn Lloyd, running back out of USC. Come to think of it, I'd probably give this one actually a B, not just a B minus, just because of the scheme fit. I do think there were better running backs available, but the scheme fit, very similar to Edgerrin Cooper, makes sense. It's not the most sexy pick. That's why I do give it a B. So yeah, ignore the B minus. I think I would give this a B, but yeah, I mean, it's a good pick for Green Bay. I'm not going to argue too much with that one. Now we get to some of the picks that I'm not really excited about. And that's Tyron Hooper out of Missouri. I just didn't see it. I think at earliest he should have gone in the 5th round. He has a long ways to go to be a starting linebacker. You don't even need, though, another linebacker, I think. You just took Edgerrin Cooper. That's also why. This is just bad process, in my opinion. I think this could have been an F. And on top of that, I'm just not high on this guy. So with all that being said, I think that gets a D minus. I'm not gonna go all the way down to F because I think he has some potential. He could develop into something, but I think he has a very long way to go. Then Evan Williams, safety out of Oregon. Give me an F for this one. This is really because they're trading up. They gave a lot of picks up to go get Evan Williams, who I had a day, maybe a 7th round pick. And there's value to be had. Malik Mutafa, I had a top 50 grade on him. I think they should have took him. So that was a very bad pick. And again, it also has to do with trading up to get this guy. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when you take Javon Bullard there. There's a lot of other players needed. I know you could have double dipped at safety, which is a good plan. But I just didn't see it with Evan Williams. He's, at best, I think, a special team guy. But, yeah, I'm not going to, with these draft grades, I don't go into all these day 3 picks. But Michael Pratt out of Tulane, like I said, that might be, just from the value standpoint, that's their best pick. I had a 4th round grade on him. I think he's going to be a really good backup in the league. Maybe even could be a low end starter someday. Yeah, 4th round pick at the end of the 7th. That is tremendous value for the Green Bay Packers. The rest of their picks, all solid picks. So ultimately, though, I am going to go with a B pick. The Tyron Hooper and Evan Williams picks really bring this one a little bit more down for me. Other than that, though, it was a really solid draft. But B's not a bad grade by one stretch of the imagination. That's just about like the average draft, I think. A solid draft that you should be drafting decent enough, and that's where I have Green Bay. So, not a bad draft. I'm going to put them above the Jaguars and the 49ers in the B tier. All right, Lions up next. And the Lions had a very Lions draft with how aggressive they were. I made a lot of trades to go get these guys. So we start out with Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. 1st round talent. Great pick for the Detroit Lions. He fits that scheme. They desperately needed that cornerback help. If you watched the Lions last year, you know they just weren't a great team in the secondary. They needed help there. So I really like their fit with that guy, Terrion Arnold, in the 1st round. And then Dennis Rakestraw. I have to actually say this one about Arnold. The reason why it doesn't get an A for me and it gets an A- is they did give up quite a bit to go up and get this guy. That's a little ding. I think that could come back a little bit. I believe they gave up, I want to say it was a 2nd next year. I'm not sure, though, which quite a hefty price to pay because 2nd round picks are valuable. But anyway, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the next pick at 61. I really like this fit as well. Double dipping on cornerback. That's a good plan. Like I said, it was their most important need here. And Ennis Rakestraw Jr., I think, was a top 50 player. For me, top 50 pick for sure on my top 50 big board. A 2nd round grade on him. Great pick for the Lions. Again, double dipping, and you could get 2 very solid starters here. You have some uncertainty at that cornerback room. And then Giovanni Manu, offensive tackle out of British Columbia. You just want to make a comment on this one. They did have to trade up for him. He is a very polarizing prospect. Could be, or not polarizing, I guess, but he could be this. He could develop into something, but he could also be a big bust. He has traits, but he really needs to learn the position. So that's what I'm going to say on that one. Just a couple picks I thought were steals in the end of the 6th. Mekhi Wingo out of LSU. That's a great pick. And I had a 4th round grade for him. He was a top 10 interior D-line for me. I think he has some room to grow. That's why he was a 4th round player. But he has a lot of traits to be a good interior D-line. And then Christian Mahogany. Great pick as well. My interior line 10 out of Boston College. 3rd to 4th round grade on this guy. I think he belonged up there. Could be a great center at the end of the 6th round. Obviously the Lions' offensive line is a very critical position for them. You're getting excellent value, in my opinion, in the 6th. So, Detroit, good draft for them. I'm going to give them an A- draft. I think the trading up is going to get me a little bit more hesitant. They traded up for a lot of these guys. I believe it was Sionavaki that they also traded up for. They lost some picks, especially in the future. I believe they lost their 2nd and 3rd round pick next year. So you got to take that into consideration, but I do have them at the top of A- just because I think they got some excellent value in this draft. So really solid draft there for Detroit, in my opinion. All right, Bears up next. Bears, not very many picks to speak of, but they do get Caleb Williams At number 1, I'm honestly going to go with an A+ here. I know it was obvious that they were going to take him, but this is a steal in my opinion due to the fact that they, traded away their first round pick last year to the the Panthers. And they got all those assets as well as this pick. That's just insane value to me. And Caleb Williams, I know a lot of people are lower on him at this point, but I think he, at the beginning of the draft process, we're not ready to move him up yet. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, at the beginning of the draft process, the hype, I think, was valid for him. He is one of these prospects that I think is generational coming out. Like, the top prospects who I think would be the more generational player as of late, like a Trevor Lawrence, who has been a solid QB in the NFL. I think he's going to hopefully be better than that. Trevor Lawrence obviously has a much difficult situation in Jacksonville. I think Caleb Williams is walking into a really good situation, which is kind of weird to say in Chicago, but that's where I see it. Anyway, moving on, Rome Odunze out of Washington. Great pick as well. Keenan Allen type of player here, in my opinion, in Rome Odunze. You get those two players. That's just a perfect fit with Rome and Keenan on this team. Great deep threat. Caleb Williams is going to have a lot of fun with him. And now you got a great, could be an elite wide receiver core. And I don't take that word lightly. So that was an excellent pick from the Bears, in my opinion. And then Kuron Amajaji, offensive tackle out of Yale. Good pick. Forgot to put this, but I believe I had a 3rd to 4th round grade on this guy. Maybe just a 3rd. Not sure, but yeah, I mean, this guy at Yale, good offensive tackle. Has some work to do, as most of these 3rd round picks do, but right around where I thought he should have gone. And then we might as well just talk about these 2 picks at the bottom of the top of the 4th. Torrey Taylor, punter out of Iowa. I mean, he just seemed like, from what I've heard, I did not get to him, but he just seems like a great punter talent. But I just don't think drafting a punter, especially in the 4th round when I think there was a lot of value to add, is a good pick. We'll see what happens. I think it's just a fine pick. But Torrey Taylor will be probably a great punter in the league. And then Austin Booker, edge out of Kansas, I think is a steal. I had a 3rd round grade on this guy. I think he was getting slept on in the draft process. He has a lot of traits to be a really high-end second edge player. They needed some help on that unit too. And to get a player like this in the 4th round, I think is a great value. So I give that one an A+. Overall, the Bears, in my opinion, are going to get an A, and I think they are just below the Buccaneers at the top of the A. So I don't think they overthrow the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers had some overall better value in the 1st to 3rd rounds. It's very tight, though. This, obviously, I'm going off value for these grades. The Bears are probably going to have a better draft in general because they got Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze. Just talent-wise, they'll probably have a better draft. But value-wise, I think the Buccaneers hit it spot on, if that makes sense. So, but obviously, the talent-wise has a big effect. I think that does come into effect with them getting better grades over some of these other teams below them. So, yeah, the Bears at A. Then we got the Minnesota Vikings here. And Minnesota, obviously the first 2 picks are the story of their draft. They take J.J. McCarthy at 10. Had to trade up for this guy, but that's a great pick at 10. J.J. McCarthy, I think, has the talent to be a top 10 QB. He fits this scheme that they're trying to run. I think if you trade it up high enough, you're getting into risky territory with him because obviously, he has a low sample size and was a game manager on that elite Michigan team. He has the talent to develop, and I think he showed it on tape. but there are some concerns there. He is a winner, though. I mean, you can't really deny that from him. And then you got Dallas Turner, edge out of Alabama. A lot of people calling this a steal. I'm going to give this an A-. Very similar to the reasons why we did Terry Arnold. They did have to move up to get this guy. Already shorter on picks. Not sure what they gave up, but obviously they probably had to give up something to go up and get this kind of a prospect. You know, he's a very elite prospect, though. When we're talking about just the player in general, I think Brian Flores will make wonders with this guy. He could turn into a top edge player just with the amount of talent he has. And then, not going to talk about any of these day 3 picks, just a solid draft for the Vikings. Like I said, their draft really hinges on these first 2 picks. I could see these 2 players, I think, have some room to be busts. Honestly, they could have that. That could end up making me look stupid for giving this team an A here, which is what I am doing. And I'm honestly putting them really high on this A list. Above the, honestly, this grading system doesn't matter too much, or this ranking system doesn't matter too much when it comes to this. They're all grouped together, but I am giving a little bit of who I think had better, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think they have an A. Like I said, though, I could see J.J. McCarthy not working out, or I could see Dallas Turner maybe not working out, just because of the types of prospects they are. But anyway, really like the draft that the Vikings had there. And then we get to the Baltimore, or the AFC North here. So NFC North down the drain. Let's get to AFC North. Starting out with the Ravens, taking Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson, with their first pick. Really like this pick for the Ravens. I was debating going a steal. I think he was my he was my second best player available. Jersine Newton was on the board at that time. But Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, he has some injury concerns. That's why I think I didn't give this an A+. But he really fits that Ravens scheme. He has potential to be a lockdown corner. He probably needs to put on some weight, gain some muscle, because he's a very slender type player. But that's really the only knock on I have on him. You know, other than that, he was locked down at Clemson. So really great potential there with Nate Wiggins. We saw that with Andrew Booth, where it didn't work out with some of these injury concerns. That's also a knock. The injury concerns because of his size. We've seen it at Clemson. But other than that, really, really good pick for Nate, in my opinion. And then we get to Roger Rosengarten, offensive tackle out of Washington. I'm actually giving this a D- here. I saw a 4th to 5th round grade on him. I just didn't see it, though. I mean, he could turn into a good pick here just because he has potential. He really needs to put on some weight. Very similar to Nate Wiggins, but he has injury concerns because of that size. And with the size, lack of size with him, he has some deficiencies at tackle. Ravens have a desperate need at tackle. I think if you're throwing this guy right in to the fire, I'm going to bet on him that he's going to struggle right away. So that's just my take on Rosengarten. Isaiah Isaac out of Penn State. A lot of people had this guy really high, up there with Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I just didn't see that, though. I had a 3rd to 4th round grade. Down here in the 3rd round, I think that's a really solid pick for the the Baltimore Ravens. Not going to argue any bit about that. I think he'll be a solid, rotational. I'm not going to bet that he's going to be a second edge player, but at the end of the third round, a really solid rotational edge player for you. And then Devontae Walker, I'm going to talk about this one. Also a pick that a lot of people were high on. Think that there was a steal. I'm not going with that. With the Ravens, I really like I'm not as high on Walker. I meant to say I really like the Ravens drafting in general with the things they do, so I respect these picks. But yeah, I think he was a 4th round grade for me, which is right around where I think he should have gone. Or I think it was a 3rd or 4th. Should have wrote that down, but yeah, I mean, good pick at that time. He needs to work on some catching things, has some dropping issues, but other than that, um, could be a really good player. And then yeah, TJ Tampa, another one of these picks where people probably give this an A plus, in my opinion. Wasn't as high on TJ Tampa. I see a lot of deficiencies in his coverage game, but again, at 130, great value. So I'm going to talk about those picks just because I think a lot of people are going to give the Ravens really steals with those grades. I was not as high on those players. A lot of these guys, I think this is where they should have gone. Maybe a little higher, especially with Tampa and Walker. But other than that, I think, hit spot on those players. Anyway, because of the Roger Rosengarten pick, this is going to give me a B grade for the Ravens. It's close to a B plus, but I'm not quite there with the Ravens. I think that B is very fair for them. I do have them below the Packers and above the 49ers in that tier. All right, Bengals up here. And the Bengals hit off the draft with a great pick. I was debating going A plus for this pick. I am going to keep it at a just because I think this is probably right around where he should have gone. But the fit is excellent. Amarius Mims, I think, has the talent to be an elite offensive tackle in the league. And that's hard to come by in today's National Football League. So to get that at 18 is a great value for the Bengals. And like I said, I cannot overstate this. To get an elite offensive tackle prospect at 18, it just does not happen. Those players go in the top 10 most years. You look at Mims' profile, he does have a little bit of injury concerns and the lack of playing time a little bit, but I just didn't see that holding back his game too much at Georgia. You get that at 18, that's an excellent pick. I'm a big fan of this Amarius Mims. I think he'll be a good player. Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. I'm going to give this one a B. I think there was better prospects there, especially like a Michael Hall Jr., a player in the Ohio area, Ohio State. I think he just was a better prospect with better run defense than this Jenkins player, a bigger player, a year younger. But it's still a solid pick. This is right around where, sorry, a little bit early than what I thought. I had a second to third round grade on him. But he was on my top 64 list of players, so that's a decent pick for them. Jermaine Burton, wide receiver out of Alabama. The reason why I have a second to fourth round grade on this guy is because he has some off the field concerns, I believe, or something. He's just a weird prospect with the way things have gone with him, with his attitude. But talent-wise, I think he's a second-round player. So to throw him into Bengals territory, you get a really solid receiver, which is slowly becoming a need, especially with paying some of these guys. Jermaine Burton, I think, could be a great value in the third. McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M. It's a fine pick there. Had a fourth to fifth round grade on him. He has a long way to go, I think, to being a interior D-line. Better talent available, in my opinion, but I can see the process. He has potential. Not going to knock that one too much, but just based on what I saw, I don't really see that being a great pick. But it's just a fine pick, I think. And then, yeah, I want to talk about the Tanner McLaughlin pick. Tight end out of Arizona, my fifth tight end in this draft, a third or fourth round grade on this guy. I think he could develop into something really special. He has that receiving tight end threat. Was a really big part of that Arizona offense this year. So I really like that fit for the Bengals. But other than that, Yeah, good draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm gonna give this draft a B plus. It's close to an A minus. Because of the McKinley Jackson pick, I think that does bring it down a bit, and the Chris Jenkins one is just kind of a weird pick. I think Michael Hall Jr. would have been a better player there. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of risk with this draft too. More so risk than I think a team like the Vikings that we were talking about. Amarius Mims, I think will be a great pick, but Chris Jenkins a risky pick. Jermaine Burton's a very risky pick. Jackson's a very risky pick. A lot of these picks are risky. So, Bengals though, I like their draft. It's a good draft. B plus is a good grade, but I do have them down there with the Texans. All right. And by the way, over the Texans. All right, these final two teams here, we got the Steelers. And the Steelers took Troy Fautanu out of Washington with their first pick. Can't argue with that one at all. Troy Fautanu, I think, value-wise, is a top 15 player, in my opinion. To get him at 20 is great value, a position they really need. This offensive line has not been great for the past few years. So, Troy Fautanu, great pick. Protect whoever your quarterback's going to be. Then you got Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. I'm not really a Zach Frazier type of guy, honestly. That's why I have this one as a C. Third round grade for me. There was some better players available. In my opinion, a lot of better guard prospects just in general and centers. I know Zach Frazier will probably be a good football player because he has a very high floor. But I think there was better players. I just don't see him being anything more than just a decent to good center in the league. And I think there were some centers out there that were a little bit better, but I'm not going to knock it too much. I give it a C for a reason. And then they get some really good picks, in my opinion. Roman Wilson, a great pick I had a third round grade on him out of Michigan. You know, he has really great receiving talent, was a big help in that receiving game for the Steelers. Then they go with another Wilson. And Peyton Wilson also signed Russell Wilson. So Steelers are really liking the Wilsons here. And I like this pick a lot. A second round grade for Peyton Wilson out of NC State. I mean, this is great value in the third round. I think Peyton Wilson can develop into something really special. He has a lot of work to do. Very similar to Edgerrin Cooper we talked about with Green Bay, but out of NC State, out of the linebacker position, if he can develop, he has potential to be a really good linebacker. And then finishing off with Mason McCormick. We're going to talk about this one because I had a second or third round grade for me. I think this was a better prospect than a Frazier. Mason McCormick, a center out of South Dakota State. He can really fit into that center role. I think you get a really good battle between Frazier and McCormick. McCormick, I think, has a higher ceiling, just about the same floor, in my opinion. That's why I had him a little higher. But yeah, in the fourth round, that's excellent value in my eyes. So the Steelers, in my opinion, get an A grade for this draft. The Frazier pick could have dropped it a little bit, but some of these third round picks really helped bring that one up, especially the Mason McCormick pick as well. So really good draft in my opinion for the Steelers. I'm going to put them above Denver, but at the kind of the bottom of this A list. All right, let's finish up with the Browns, who didn't have a first round pick, but I think their first pick in this draft was a great pick. Michael Hall Jr., who with the Bengals we talked about, I think was the better player than Chris Jenkins, a top 50 player in my opinion. I think he could have gone, at the top of the second, especially with some of these guys going above him. The only other interior D-line that I think was better than him that went was Jersey Newton in the second round. A lot of these players that went to like the Rams and the Falcons just were not as good of prospects, in my opinion, as a Michael Hall Jr. The Jaguars, I think, also took one here. But yeah, Michael Hall Jr., I think, is a great fit for the Cleveland Browns and great value. And then Zach Zinter, interior O-line out of Michigan, was a guard down there. Did deal with an injury, but other than that, big boy guard. Out of Michigan, you know how good those Michigan O linemen can be. Just from what I saw, man, he's going to be a good guard and fills a big time position for the Browns. And then, not gonna honestly. So we're gonna go quick with the Browns. Had a good day 3. That's what I'll say on their day 3. But yeah, the Browns I think had an A, and I'm gonna put them just below the Broncos right there. I think they had a great draft. Really not gonna knock them at all. Right up there with these teams in this tier. So yeah, anyway, guys, that's my AFC and NFC North draft grades. We are wrapping up with the NFC East and AFC East next time. Thank you all for watching. Peace out.